This video is purely my personal opinion on how best the Marvel Cinematic Universe could be brought back from the brink of total woke irrelevance as well as financial decline, and it's also predicated on my view that this can only be achieved if the franchise was to actually conclude like it should have done at the end of Avengers Endgame in 2019. I mean, the hint was kind of in the name after all. But it's not like Hollywood studios know when to stop milking a cash cow franchise. It's not like they're only focused on the box office success. They're also focused on pushing the message. And for sure, Marvel's fourth and fifth phases have demonstrated this. But if a plan was urgently put into place to creatively rescue the franchise, what steps could be taken to return it to its former glory and finally allow it to rest in peace with dignity and in a way that longtime fans would be satisfied with? Well, I'm clearly only dreaming with my proposal here because it's not like what I'm going to suggest is ever going to be implemented, but here goes. The first thing I would do if I was in charge of the MCU is to focus on the feature films exclusively. The TV shows have been mostly miss with very few hits, aside from Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which ended in August of 2020. Recent TV series have really added nothing to the MCU in any great degree, and I would argue have only detracted from the quality of the overall product. Secondly, the woke stuff would have to go, that goes without saying, with a focus on politically neutral writing instead, but given the agenda-driven climate of modern Hollywood, this would probably be a hard sell for Disney and their financiers. Thirdly, the franchise would once again have to focus on the core 6 Avengers in order to bring the series full circle. Very few new characters have managed to live up to the legacy of Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and the Hulk. Ultimately, their reunion in a final Avengers film would be one of the best ways of getting audiences back into theaters and generating some interest. And there's lots of creative ways of bringing characters back. Now, of course, some of these characters are dead, but the MCU is chock full of multiverse and magical solutions and MacGuffins that could enable such a reunion. As some of you know, I'm not usually a fan of character resurrections. I think the dead should stay dead, but given the disarray of the franchise right now, I feel I would have to make an exception here. Finally, this hypothetical last phase of the MCU would also have to focus on a concluding storyline with perhaps 3 or 4 final films linked by a common plot thread. That way, there's a sense of a building narrative structure, much like the Infinity Saga. I would draw some inspiration for this new phase from Star Trek Picard Season 3, a final reunion of legacy characters who are the only ones who can stop a diabolical, earth-shattering threat. This final phase would begin with a new film in the present day, with the current crop of young Avengers facing this new threat and failing to stop it, ending the film on a cliffhanger, but realizing for whatever contrived story reason, only the original Avengers can save the day. The torch has to be passed back to the veterans to come out of retirement and/or the grave to rescue humanity one last time. Thankfully, Bruce Banner / the Hulk, Thor, and Hawkeye are still knocking around, so only Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Tony Stark, Iron Man, would have to be somehow resurrected. Old man Steve Rogers may have died since Endgame, but either way, he's obviously too old to fight, so a younger version of him could be brought back from the past. He is living there with Peggy Carter. Perhaps he could temporarily be brought into the present day by the likes of Stephen Strange or Wanda or someone like that, or even the Time Variance Authority, whatever. The death of Natasha Romanoff was reviled by most fans, really didn't do the character any great justice, so I don't think many fans would be upset by the idea of her resurrection. The multiverse opens up the opportunity to bring in an alternate version of the character. Finally, Tony Stark, in my opinion, is perhaps the easiest of all to resurrect. Though it's implied that his body was cremated and his remains sprinkled around his arc reactor thingy during the funeral scene of Endgame, I mean, we didn't actually see his body. We don't know that this happened for sure. I think it would be totally in keeping with Tony's character for him to have requested that his body be placed in cryostasis in the event of his death, and for Stark Industries to develop a means of reanimating him when the technology allowed. So, bringing all of the original 6 Avengers back, we bring back the saga to the beginning and very much back to the formula that works the best. Yes, it's tapping into nostalgia. Yes, it's an admission that the franchise's best days are behind it, which they are. So, the best thing to do is end the franchise with a return to form and as close to the original Phase 1 configuration as possible. The heydays, basically. I would then conclude with a coda film, an epilogue of sorts. After the final Avengers reunion movie, I would have one last solo film for Tony Stark as Iron Man, returning to the roots of the MCU with a standalone Iron Man 4. And with that, I would draw the MCU to a close and give it at least a decade before it would be allowed to be rebooted, so that a new generation of fans can discover the series that began all the way back in 2008. Of course, that would be my wish list for the MCU in an ideal world, but it seems nothing like that is on the menu anytime soon. So what do you guys think? How would you hypothetically fix the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.